Alrighty, good morning, world. Just seeing how we're looking. Whew. It's early. It's really early for this kind of discussion, but I thought I'd dive in. So, my name is Kara-Leah. I'm just trying to get the camera on the right angle so it works for you guys. I'm in my car because I have better cell phone reception outside my son's school than I have Wi-Fi reception at my house. Go figure. So it is only like 8:45 in the morning here in New Zealand, which means it's nighttime everywhere else. So I'm not expecting a whole lot of people to show up, which is kind of cool because it gives me a bit more bravery, a bit more courage to speak about the things that I am going to be speaking about. If you have just joined me, can you let me know the sound's okay? Just give me a thumbs up or a love heart or something like that, some kind of reaction, so I know the sound is good. Alrighty, so as I said, my name is Kara-Leah and I am a dedicated yoga practitioner. I'm dedicated to waking up. I have somewhat cheekily called this, yay, sounds great, woohoo! I have somewhat cheekily called this process of waking up the Awakened Heart Warrior path, because that's what it's all about for me. It's the process of becoming more and more conscious of that which I'm not conscious of. And it takes a lot of heart, takes a lot of courage to do that, because it means diving into the unconscious and into the shadows. So what I want to talk about today is sex. I want to talk about sex and sexual energy, Kundalini and Shakti, Brahmacharya. I want to dive into all of that, partly because it's on my mind as such, or it's in my body, would be more accurate, or it's in my energy. And I want to offer, maybe it's a different perspective, I'm not sure. I know a lot of people in the conscious sexuality movement, revolution, and there's great work that's happening there. And yet I find myself, this is kind of interesting, I find myself sometimes questioning my approach to sex or energy. Well, not questioning, inquiring. Inquiring is a good word. So I just wanted to share. I'm just a little bit concerned about the light coming in from the side. If there's too much, as the sun comes over, we'll see what happens so that the video, the sound, the visuals stay good. Alrighty, so here's the deal. So I have been practicing yoga for a long time. I had a kind of an awakening in 2004, and things started to move in me a lot then. Kundalini started to move a lot. So in my 20s, I had a really high sex drive. Like, I absolutely adored sex and loved sex and had a lot of sex. And then I had this awakening and Kundalini started to move and my life kind of imploded. And I came back to New Zealand and, when I was in a relationship, still had a lot of sex, but started to enter periods in my life where I was mostly celibate. And so over the last 7.5 years, I've only had one long-term relationship for a year. And the gentleman that I was with lived overseas, so there would be 3 or 4 months when we wouldn't necessarily see each other. So really for the last 7.5 years, aside from a couple of short-term relationships, I have been single, which means I have been pretty much celibate. And what I found really interesting about this is that when I was single in my 20s, I would last about 3 weeks. That was as long as I could go. And then it was like, okay, I got to go out and get laid. And I would just go out and choose a man and get laid. Or I would have, a lover or whatever. But there was no way in my 20s that I could not be having sex. And what I started to notice in my 30s, after I'd had these awakening experiences and after I was doing practice, was that I still had the same sex drive. I still had the same amount of sexual energy going through my body, but I didn't have the same impetus or the same desire to necessarily play it out in physical form. And I found that really curious. I found that super curious. I witnessed it, I noticed it, and part of me was like, this is intriguing. Like, I kind of really love to be having amazing sex, but the desire for it and the opportunity for it often is not there, and I'm okay with that. Is that okay? Like, what's going on? So I've been witnessing it. And then I was talking to one of my best guy friends like 2 or 3 years ago, and we were talking about this because he knows how sensual I am and how sexual I am. And he's like, I can't believe you just don't have lovers. And I'm like, yeah, I don't operate that way. And he's like, well, you're masturbating, right? And I was like, actually, nah. And he's like, what? he's like, what? How can you not be masturbating? And I'm like, well, I just don't really have the urge. I don't really care. And he was aghast. He was like, but you have to, you can't like not masturbate. You know, if you're not having sex, you have to masturbate. And I was like, shit, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm missing out. Maybe I'm suppressing my sex drive. Maybe something's wrong. So I experimented. I'm like, all right, well, let's go back to masturbation and see what happens. And it was a really interesting thing because I started to notice that it wasn't that I was forcing myself to do it, but it was like school homework or something. It's like, oh yeah, right, now I have to masturbate because that's what I'm meant to be doing. And it wasn't that I didn't have the most extraordinary time or anything like that, right? But I could really sense that it wasn't coming from life happening through me. And that's how I tend to live now, life happening through me. And so the masturbation kind of petered off pretty quick. But what I did notice was that when I did have a genuine urge, when there was a genuine desire, when the body was like, yeah, we want to do this, invariably in those particular self-pleasuring experiences or whatever, there would be some kind of quite profound energetic release or healing that would happen. And that was pretty cool. The bus just went past. Do you see the lighting? And I'm like, oh, that's really, really interesting. And so I did start to realize, and this is the thing, right? So Kundalini is fully awake in me. Kundalini, she's doing her thing. And Kundalini being fully awake and Kundalini doing her thing has changed the way that I perceive and the way that I interact with sexual energy. So on the flip side, so once I sort of realized all that, I was like, you know what? It's totally cool that I'm not masturbating because the physical release just doesn't really, it doesn't mean much to me. It's kind of like, it's kind of pointless. And it's, like I said, it's not that I don't have a sex drive. It's not that I'm not a sexual being. It's just that the place that I have come to in my practice. Anyway, so fast forward maybe 6 months later, and me and this amazing guy friend, I love him to bits, like he's the bomb. And we dance so well on the dance floor. Like he and I, we're like lovers who have never physically been together. Like, and when I get on the dance floor with him, it's just like, damn. So he's a photographer, and he is one of the best photographers in the world. Pete Longworth, go look him up. And we were doing a photo shoot. It was the first photo shoot that I'd done with him, and I was pretty excited. And so we're in the forest, we're in the woods, in nature. And I had my Yui boom there, and so I was playing this amazing DJ, Alex Cruz. He does this set of playlists called Deep and Sexy. And they're like an hour long, and they're extraordinary. And I had been listening to his playlist, Deep and Sexy, for the last year. And it was just like embedded in my nervous system. And it's the most sensual, sexual, like, oh my God, amazing music. So there I am doing this photo shoot with Pete, who, we have like lover energy, even though I've never been together. And I'm listening to this deep and sexy music. And I'm just in flow, right? I'm in total flow doing what I do when I'm by myself. It was the first time I'd ever allowed someone to see how I actually practice yoga. And it felt really sacred to me to allow myself to be seen in that space, because when I drop into practice, when Kundalini moves me the way that she does, of course it's sexual energy, right? And so it's just coming through me, it's pouring through my pores. And I trusted Pete, and I allowed him to see me in that space, which was both vulnerable and open and sexual and sensual and all of that. And as we're doing the shoot, and nature is there, and something that's happened to me over the last 5, 6, 7 years is that I feel so connected, so part of, so corny, at one with nature. Like it really feels so often that like nature is making love to me, like the way the wind feels on my skin and the sun feels on my skin and the look of the water, and so all of these ingredients were happening, and the photo shoot was going on, and I just felt like I was in this full body, ongoing, like epic bliss and ecstasy state. So we finished the shoot, and there's like a thermal river running through there. So I get in the waterfall to finish it off and do all of that, and then get dressed again and get in the car, and we're on our way to Wanderlust because I'm presenting at Wanderlust, so's Pete. And I'm driving my old beat up Toyota Laser, and as I'm driving, I'm like, holy fuck, suddenly like I started to have a full-on energetic body orgasm. And as I'm like trying to drive, and like really focusing and concentrating while I'm like having this orgasm, and Pete's sitting beside me, and I'm a little bit shy, right? Because, like orgasm. And he looks over and he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, so you're the first man to ever give me an orgasm without even touching me. And he just burst into tears of laughter, you know, like it was the most extra. And then another one came through, and it was like a wave. So that was my entrance to Wanderlust that particular year, the photo shoot with Pete and the energetic orgasms. And it really sums up my experience of sexuality and sexual energy now, is that when I'm not in a relationship with, you know, like I'm not, I don't take lovers, and I'm not even really masturbating. And so the energy is just constantly building up in my system. And then when I practice, and I have a really dedicated Tantra, the real deal, not the neo-sexual one, but Tantra practice. When I do my practice, right, it's specifically working with this energy. It's bringing Kundalini and Shakti up, and it's bringing Shiva down, and it's uniting them both at the heart and birthing a new consciousness. And so what I've noticed is that when I'm meditating, when I'm contemplating, when I'm doing my practice, you know, I really feel the sexual energy in my body. It's as if I'm being made love to from the inside out. And as I allow that feeling, as I allow that sexual energy, it rises up, and it's kind of like a heat-seeking missile. It's like a blockage-seeking missile, where it goes through my body, and I feel it going through the nadis. It's like this energy, and then it'll get to like a blockage, and it'll go. And then sometimes there'll be an insight, and then it's like whoosh, the energy just drops back down again, and then I can feel it start to build. And sometimes like I'll have flashes, or like I'll see myself in sexual ecstasy, but you know, and it's like I'm like, is someone making love to me? Like that's what it feels like. And then the energy begins to rise again, and Kundalini begins to go through up around the body, and then it will find another blockage, and it'll be like, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what the yogis talk about. Like I wasn't consciously doing it. I haven't been consciously attempting to raise the sexual energy up through my body, right? It's been happening spontaneously and naturally for about 10 years or so. And because I haven't been spilling out my sexual energy in physical encounters with men or women, that energy has just been going purely into the waking up process. And it's just like the penny dropped. It's like, oh my God, no wonder, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, this process feels like it has sped up for me, because Kundalini, the sexual energy, because Kundalini, right, the sexual energy is doing what it needs to do. And if anyone's got any questions about this stuff, like, please feel free, because I can, you know, to throw the questions down there in the comments, and as much as I can from my experience, I can answer those questions. But what this all takes me around to is that I'm now living in a space, like I went to a party on Saturday night, and I danced, and I really dance when I dance, and I danced for like 5 hours, and I was in a state of ecstasy and bliss, like rolling soft, energetic orgasms on the dance floor at times. It was just like coming through me, you know, and that's the natural place that I'm in a lot of the time, is that it doesn't take very much for me to feel waves of ecstasy and bliss, and it doesn't take very much for me to have an energetic orgasm, just because of the pure bliss of being alive, of being in my breath, of being in my body. And so I'm just going back around. So any questions, throw them in. So my sense is, right, is that our sexuality and our sensuality, it does not need an object. It does not need anything outside of ourselves in order to be activated. It does not need anything outside of ourselves in order to be, you know, we don't need someone else in order to feel turned on. You know, we can feel turned on simply by, you know, I love these gloves, for example. Like I absolutely adore these merino gloves, and they make me feel turned on. They make me feel alive. I love the way they look, the way they feel. And there's a place in life that we begin to get to where literally the experience of life is a turn on. And I think for many of us, when we haven't yet made that leap into that place, you know, one of the reasons we can get so hung up on sex, or on being sexually attracted to someone, or on, you know, finding the right person to have sex with, is because we mistakenly think that we need to be with someone in order to feel all of that sexual energy, in order to feel that aliveness, in order to feel that bliss. And so we're looking for the person who will turn us on, or we're looking for the sexual experience, a physical sexual experience that will turn us on, that will take us to those places. And it's not necessary. It's not necessary. There's a place that you can get to where it just happens spontaneously, simply by being intimate with your breath, deeply intimate with your breath, and by being intimate with your body, like by being in your body, you know, like, and I dance a lot. I dance and I move, and like it feels like my body makes love to me from the inside out. Now, the other thing that's worth noting, and this isn't in this amazing little book on Tantra and sexual energy that I read recently by Elizabeth Haich. I'll put the book in the notes for this video. And she talks about this a lot. She talks about sexual energy and yoga and Tantra, and in a way that I haven't really read often, and it was epic to read it. It was really epic to read it. Highly recommend this book. But when she talks about sexual energy, she talks about Brahmacharya. So Brahmacharya is often translated as being celibate, right? But Brahmacharya, the way that I perceive it, is the aligned use of sexual energy. And when I say aligned, I mean aligned with life, not with one's desires necessarily, but with what is the unfolding of life. And when people still have a whole lot of sexual energy moving through their body and they haven't necessarily done enough practice, etc., to attempt to see Brahmacharya as, I will not have sex with anyone, or I will not masturbate, I'm going to suppress or repress or deny my sexual energy, it can actually have negative impacts. It's not necessarily the right thing for that person to do in that time. So it's really important to understand that working with sexual energy is not about a cookie cutter, one-fits-all way to approach it at all. It really depends on where you are in your evolution of consciousness, and it really does depend on how much practice you're doing, and it depends on your ability to start to really tune into sexual energy and allow it to move up your body. Because you do not ever want to suppress or deny or repress or block or push down sexual energy, because you know, whatever you push down is going to erupt in other ways. You just have to look at like the Catholic Church and the priests, etc., to see what can happen when you try and suppress that energy. Like the energy has a natural flow, right? So the reason I'm sharing my experience is not to say, hey, this is the way that we're all meant to be. It's not that at all. The reason I'm sharing my experience with sexual energy, with Brahmacharya, is that I just wanted to offer maybe a counterpoint or another perspective, and saying that you can be fully sensual and fully sexual and so alive and so in bliss and so in ecstasy and completely celibate. I mean, when I say completely, I mean not even masturbating, right? And that is entirely, entirely possible, you see. So I'm just going to read this comment. So as Elisa says, you know, she's saying, I spent a few years in celibacy, went inward, and really didn't find I was missing anything by not having that with another at the time. And, you know, this is my experience right now. So I find really fascinating is, you know, I'm celibate. Like I did see a guy short term at the beginning of this year, so I wasn't celibate then. And I was in a year relationship last year that ended in May. But aside from that, you know, like celibate. And while oh my God, like I cannot wait when I'm sharing that experience with another. I also don't feel as if I am missing out. I don't feel like there is anything lacking from my life. And that's extraordinary. That sense of like being able to tap into sexual energy and move sexual energy through and embody sexual energy and sensuality, and, you know, really take delight, like take utter delight in just dancing and cooking and breathing and rolling around on the floor, whatever. And there's such a fullness. There is such a fullness. So, takeaways. Any questions here from anyone? Because there's a few of you watching now. I'm not, you know, you put sex in the title of a video and people are like, whoa, sex, yeah, I want to talk about that. Last call for comments, for questions before I do a wrap up and a bit of a takeaway on this. I love it when I see a love heart come floating up. So it's like a little love heart, balloon, bubble. Okay, no comments are coming through. Takeaway on this. Takeaway on this is to really get to know your own sensuality, and your own sexuality. Recognizing that everybody has a different relationship to sensuality and a different relationship to sexuality. Recognizing that there is no one right way, that becoming more conscious or more awake is not necessarily about suddenly being cool in polyamory, for example. It's just one way to do it. You might be into sacred monogamy. You might be into total celibacy. Recognizing that there are many, many ways to choose to interact, to engage, to relate to sensuality and to sexuality. And the key is knowing yourself and allowing the truth of your experience to flow through you, whatever it is, so that you're neither avoiding or denying or suppressing or repressing. So for some people, that means that they really do need to go out and engage with lovers, because that is what they need in order to break through their conditioning, in order to evolve. And then for other people, it means that they need to experience total celibacy, you know. So to recognize that there is no one size fits all. There is no one right way to do it. It is really so much about where you are in your journey, where you are and what you need. So my name is Kara-Leah, and that is a little blurb from me on sexuality and sensuality. I feel like I could keep talking about this for ages, but I'm going to wrap it up now and go home and have some breakfast. My mum's staying, so go and hang out with her as well. Who knows, she might even be watching this. Hi, Mum. Big love to you all. So nice to see all of you watching. Yeah, it's really beautiful to see you and to feel your energy. Have a blissful, ecstatic-filled Thursday or Wednesday if you are living in the past and the rest of the world. Alrighty, bye-bye.